I'd never heard the words alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency until I was 42 years old. I'd been an athlete all my life. Basketball, football, track and field, competitive swimming. I stayed pretty active into my mid-30s, and I was proud of the fact that I could run up and down a basketball court with guys half my age. But over the next couple years, I started to experience some episodes of shortness of breath, which came more frequently and were a little stronger each time. I thought it was nothing that a little time in the gym couldn't fix, but the time in the gym just resulted in more shortness of breath. When I couldn't breathe one day walking along the golf course, I knew it was time to figure out what was going on. I was sent to a pulmonologist, and that was the day I heard those words, alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency, for the very first time. The only other words I remember from that day are fatal and incurable. The next day, I got a call from an alpha-1 patient advocate who helped to better explain the disorder and to tell me how it was going to affect all aspects of my life. He gave me a plan to manage alpha-1 going forward. He told me there was a therapy available that could help to slow or stop the damage in my lungs. Most important, he told me to learn everything that I could about the disorder, to become my own best advocate. It's among the best advice I ever got. In December 2004, I was placed on the list for a double lung transplant. My lung function had dropped into the teens. Even something as simple as having a phone conversation had become nearly impossible, even with supplemental oxygen. The call came 3 times over the course of the next 4 years. Each time there was some issue with the donor lungs that prevented them from being usable for transplant. The third call came November 2007. I was airlifted to the University of Colorado, sure that this was it. I was in pre-op, IVs started, ready to go into surgery, when the doctor came in and said that a spot had been found on the donor lungs and that I'd have to go home. My lung function was around 10%, and I went home sure that that was my last chance. I said goodbye to my family and friends, I made peace with the world, and I prepared to die. I was 49 years old. When it rang that morning, I looked, saw the number on the caller ID, and thought my transplant coordinator was calling to wish me a happy new year. She was good about things like that. Instead, she was calling to tell me that I was going to get a second chance at life, that they had the lungs that I'd been waiting for. I was airlifted to the University of Colorado for transplant. Within 8 hours, I was in surgery. 8 days later, I was out of the hospital. Within a couple of weeks, I was walking up to several miles daily. For the first time in years, the concept of a future became reality to me. When my doctor and I discussed resuming augmentation therapy, there were a couple things that were really important to me. First, I wanted to be able to infuse at home. It didn't make any sense to me that someone with a chronically compromised immune system would go once a week to a hospital or an infusion suite, susceptible to all of the germs that might be in the air there. I also wanted to deal with people that I knew, liked, and trusted. Those things made Coram an easy choice. The Coram nurses came to my home, helped train my wife to handle my infusion, which she's now done for over a year. The ability to do the infusion at home and for her to handle it gave us a flexibility and a peace of mind we couldn't have possibly had going to any other facility. 2 days before the first anniversary of my transplant, I married the love of my life. Later that year, I climbed to 12,000 feet above sea level in Estes Park, Colorado, a point too high for trees to even grow. I also began to dedicate my life, increasing awareness of alpha-1 and promoting organ and tissue donation. I tell patients that we're all part of a club that none of us wanted to join. But while words like fatal and incurable may be accurate, they're not time sensitive. You can have alpha-1 without alpha-1 having you. I've been fatal and incurable for over a decade now, and just celebrated the 5th anniversary of my successful double lung transplant. And I anticipate many more years to come. There's still a lot of work to do. There's a lot of patients who need someone to help them through the initial phases of the disorder. In May 2012, I joined Coram as an alpha-1 patient advocate. It was a culmination of my desire to work within the alpha-1 community, to help newly diagnosed patients who, like me, probably thought they were the only person on earth with this thing. It was also a way to pay tribute to Phil, that first Alpha 1 advocate who had called me all those years ago. Phil's gone now, which is something we've become all too accustomed to in the Alpha community. But his work and the lessons he taught me live on.